Hey folks, this is Odin. Today I want to cover Captain Cook. Captain Cook is a very famous captain, and the reason behind that is because he served his country quite well. He was married for 16 years, for example, but only 4 out of those 16 years did he spend at home with his wife. The remainder of the years he spent out at sea, navigating the southern hemisphere and some of the northern hemisphere in his last journey. But his real claim to fame was because he found new land for England, and to this day they still claim that land that he discovered. Let's begin our journey with covering him. He's also credited for circumnavigating Antarctica. In fact, he's credited for being the first captain to do so. One thing not many people know about is NASA named some of their space shuttles after Captain Cook's ships. Cook explored and mapped more territory than any navigator of his era, and his achievements later saw him honored by NASA. So his ship Discovery was one of several historical vessels that inspired the name of the third space shuttle, and NASA later named their final shuttle Endurance, which of course was named after one of Captain Cook's ships as well. But let's talk about his journeys. Really his first and second journey, but we'll also cover his third journey a little later. Here's a picture of one of his ships. These are the type of ships that he used when he was exploring. And here is a map of his first journey. The journey's always begun here. Came around, took a break down here, and restocked for supplies by Cape Horn. Now, this is his first journey. So, he left home, he went to Cape Horn, and then he kind of was out to sea right here. What they was looking for is something that at that time they called the Great Southern Continent. At that time they believed the northern hemisphere had all this land up here, so they believed that there was a huge continent in the southern hemisphere also, something that laid undiscovered. So on his first journey he came here and he was searching for that continent, and he discovered New Zealand, which he did claim for the crown at that time. Then when he left the area of New Zealand, he discovered Australia, and he went up the coastline of Australia here, where he ran into trouble and hit one of those barrier reefs and knocked a hole in the ship, and he had to pull on shore of Australia and repair the ship. Now this was the only time that happened to Captain Cook, where he had to dock his ship in such a manner. And then he later went on here to the islands, and he came down to South Africa, and he floated on back home. A journey this size took him 3 years. It was from 1768 to 1771. Ironically, when he left for his journey, the first journey, his wife gave birth, and the baby later died while he was out to sea, and he had no knowledge of this until he returned home. Now let's take a look at this same journey, but on a flat earth map. Now here is Captain James Cook's first voyage, but done on a flat earth map. I've done the best that I could with the tools that I have in marking it out. So he left his journey and went to the bottom by Cape Horn and restocked for supplies. Then he went on out into the southern hemisphere oceans, searching for the great continent that was believed to be in here. And he actually later came out and said there is no great southern continent. Then he discovered New Zealand and he mapped it out. He was a great map maker, and he came around New Zealand and up the coast of Australia, where his ship got damaged and he had to fix it there, and back around to the bottom of South Africa, where he restocked again and came on back home. 3 years. And as you can see from this map, he was circumnavigating the ice rim. But his second mission, he even came closer to the ice. We're going to get into that right now. When he arrived home, it was 1771. He basically stayed home for a year before he decided to go back out to sea and start his second mission, which is now on the screen. Again, he was searching for the great southern continent. He left home, and this time, instead of going to South America, he went to South Africa first. After leaving South Africa, he went further south, and he was experiencing a lot of ice and a lot of bad and cold weather. And this mission started in 1772. He only stayed 1 year at home. He cruised around the ice rim here, and he went back to New Zealand, a spot that he now claimed for the Queen, and he restocked. And after he restocked, again, he was doing his searching. Restocked. Search. Restock. Finally, with no luck of finding this continent, he started his journey, went to Cape Horn of Plenty, they called it. Then he went on back home. And this mission, like his last mission, lasted 3 years. So when he got back home, it was now 1775. These guys didn't mind going out to sea for many years, not knowing if they would ever come back. They were truly explorers of their day, and that's why they are remembered to this day. But they also are remembered because of the land they claimed for the Queen. New Zealand in this case, and Australia. And into this day, this land is still recognized and owned by the Queen. I'm going to get to that in a minute. I'm going to show y'all what I'm talking about. But anyway, let's take a look at this map, but on a flat earth map. Okay, here's his journey mapped out on a flat earth map, where he leaves his home, goes to South Africa, comes around South Africa and he's riding the ice rim right here this whole time. Goes to New Zealand and restock. He explores around this area here, which he never finds the great continent that they were looking for, because there is no great continent. There is an ice rim. And he actually came clean and said that there was no great southern continent, there was an ice rim. Then he restocks in New Zealand, rides the ice rim again, heads on back to the Horn of Plenty, Cape Horn, restocks, comes back home. 3 years journey. 3 years it took him to go around this ice rim at that time, back in the 1700s. So I find it quite amazing. And this is good evidence that the earth is flat by him never reaching this continent. And they did see, they seen penguins, and you know, they seen all kind of ice, and but they just never really came clean or admitted that there was a continent. And he was a great map maker. He would have seen something like that, and he would have, if there was a continent down there, he would have mapped that continent out in a heartbeat and claimed it for the Queen. That was his job, and he was very thorough at doing his job. He wasn't just a run-of-the-mill captain. He was a great captain and a great map maker. One of the best of all time. Some of the maps that he mapped out is still used to this day. For example, the New Zealand map. They still use his mapping when they're showing pictures of New Zealand. Now here's a great example of Captain Cook's map making. And I'm going to leave a link to this video in the description box because it was really a great documentary. Now this is what they had gave him, the map they gave him of New Zealand. As you can see, it doesn't, right. That's his map right here.
Okay, here's what Cook produced 5 years later. Now this really is a map. Just look at this detail.
See the detail? He would have easily mapped Antarctica.
And when you put it up against a modern satellite image, you can see just how precise it is. So precise, in fact, it was still being used well.
It's probably still being used today. Because satellites, in my opinion, don't exist. It was just a little off right here. But who knows, maybe throughout the years something got messed up in this area. Something got messed up on his map. Maybe they didn't want it to add up perfectly. But I think Captain Cook, I think his map was pretty close to perfect for mapping this area. He was a great captain and a great map maker. Okay, now to this day, who governs New Zealand and who owns it? I know they feel like it's the people own it, or they have their own government, but in reality, the Queen owns it. Queen Elizabeth II is the country's head of state and is represented by a Governor General. Okay, Queen Elizabeth this day is ruler of New Zealand. Maybe ruler might not be the right word, but I promise you, any kind of diamonds or gold or riches found in New Zealand, that's going to go to the crown. Sure, the people who's mining it might get some of it, but the bulk of it's going to go to her and her family, of course. And it's the same thing with Australia. She's a ruler of Australia, and all the riches of that country will go to her as well. So let's see. When the Queen visits Australia, she speaks and acts as the Queen of Australia and not as Queen of the United Kingdom. And I assure you, if Captain Cook had discovered a continent in the southern hemisphere, like the continent that we are believed or led to believe exists, called Antarctica, the Queen would own that continent. The only reason why they don't own America is because we had a revolutionary war against them at that time. But I assure you, if that continent did exist, it would be owned by the Queen. But the continent does not exist. It's an ice rim. And Captain Cook proved that. He proved it without even knowing it. Here are some of the details of his second voyage. And right here in the agenda, it was to search for the southern continent in the Pacific, and he searched for it, yet he did not find it. Why did he not find a southern continent is the question. I'm going to leave a link to this site as well, because it's very interesting and it's a great read. So in closing, I'm going to say that Captain Cook was a great explorer, and had he discovered if there was an Antarctic, a continent below, he would have claimed it for the crown. That was his job, and he would have been very proud to do his job. Now on the screen here is all three of his missions, and the blue one is his last one that I didn't cover. In the blue one, there was searching for northern passage, like some sort of shortcut to leave here and go around, come through here so they can make trades in this area here. Of course, he didn't start this way. He started his usual way, went around to southern Africa, and then he came up here to Hawaii. He restocked. He stayed there for quite some time, and he left Hawaii and he came back because something, I think a mast had broke on their ship, and there was some kind of a conflict broke out there. He wasn't welcomed again because he had just left, and people was just tired of him. So a conflict broke out, and he kidnapped or abducted one of the kings of this island in Hawaii, and basically the people rebelled against him and his Marines, and they killed him. So once he passed away, these broken little blue lines is what his crew did. They did go back and look for this passage that they couldn't find, and finally they made their way back on home. So Captain Cook passed away in a conflict in Hawaii, and he was older. He was like 50, and he had gotten much more ornery, so to speak, at that time. He was not the same person, and he was just too old for exploring this type of exploration. And that's what happened to Captain Cook. There's a plaque in Hawaii with his name on it. And here's an image of that plaque where he met his death. And there's a lot of different stories to it, but basically what I've said happened to him, and he passed away right there from a blow to the head. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and now you can see that Captain Cook was originally going around this ice rim, and he actually went over 60,000 miles on his second voyage, and clearly he could see the ice rim, but he couldn't find the continent. And he couldn't find the continent because it doesn't exist, and the world is flat. So thank you for watching, and everyone have a great day.